Welcome, I'm Nina Gryphon, and this is the astrology of week 2 of June 2024. First off, I wanted to say thank you to all of my patrons. I appreciate all of your support. If you would like to become a patron and get my monthly ebook, Magical Elections, which teaches you how and when to make astrological talismans at the most astrologically auspicious times, you can go to patreon.com/Nina Gryphon. June 11th, Mars at 1 Taurus squares Pluto in Aquarius. This is Mars wrestling with the god of death. Interestingly, most often the two work together to destroy and kill. In this case, they are in a tense square and their goals are at odds with each other. Pluto is in the superior position of the square, which means he has the upper hand. He's also much more superior than Mars. As we discussed last week, Mars in Taurus can indicate a period of humbling or even humiliation for the ordinarily proud and egocentric Mars. He's already on the back foot here, and the square to Pluto suggests Mars grappling with a much greater absolute power, symbolized by Hades, the god of the realm of the dead. Even Heracles had to give in to death many times in his life. A few times he was able to wrestle it to a standstill, but of course, he could never permanently defeat it. June 12th, Mercury at 19 Gemini squares Saturn in Pisces. If Saturn is the material realm, the physical vehicle, Mercury is the spirit that animates it and makes it breathe, move, and reason. I will tell you a story that highlights the relationship between Mercury and Saturn. The 17th century astrologer William Lilly interpreted a horary chart for a would-be alchemist wishing to know whether he would attain the Philosopher's Stone. As background, the Philosopher's Stone is the goal of the alchemical process, and not only is it said to transform base matter into gold, but when ingested, it is said to give eternal youth and life. In this particular horary chart, Mercury and Saturn were conjoined in the 9th house of alchemy and spiritual attainment, and Lilly advised the querent to stop his alchemical workings, and that, quote, he erred in his materials or his composition, working upon things terrene or of too gross and heavy a substance, end quote. In other words, Lilly gently advised the client that he was taking his alchemical lab work a little bit too literally and really should have focused on spiritual development. He also advised the client that he was coming down with a touch of tuberculosis, which is another meaning of Mercury, air and breathing, combined with Saturn as the author of cold diseases like TB. This little anecdote tells us about the tensions between Mercury and Saturn. One is very light, plastic, and transformative, while the other is heavy, gross matter that naturally resists change. Saturn in Pisces in our world can represent religious extremes, as Pisces is very linked with organized religion. Mercury in Gemini is the magician, working with the subtle materials of the air, so when they are in a square aspect, we can expect tension between the need for transformation, a light, creative, and magical approach, and a person, substance, or situation that resists transformation. The end result can be frustrating and can require changing our strategy. Sometimes there can be literal or metaphorical congestion, as happens with cold, dense Saturn, which has to be shifted first before anything can change. June 14th, Mercury at 24 Gemini conjoins the Sun. This is the end of one synodic cycle of Mercury and the Sun and the start of a new cycle. It is a cycle in which mercurial energies predominate, as it occurs in Mercury's own sign, Gemini. As with all the Gemini configurations we saw earlier in the month, these can all be utilized for gaining subtle and refined understanding in any field of study, but especially in studies that are intended to make us fully fledged humans, such as the humanities and the Hermetic arts. Recall that the solar synodic conjunction is when the conjoined planet is re-energized and purified, returning to the source, the sun, for replenishment. In the essay The Idea of the Center in the Traditions of Antiquity, the French philosopher René Guénon writes about the center as a key concept in traditional symbolism. All that he says applies equally to the solar synodic conjunction, a periodic alignment of planetary centers in time and space. Quote, the point at the center of a circle is the emblem of the principle, while the circle is that of the world. The point at the center of the circle has also been taken, probably from very ancient times, as a figure of the sun, because in the physical order, the latter is truly the center or the heart of the world. It is perhaps for this reason that most archaeologists, whenever they encounter the symbol, assign it exclusively a solar significance, whereas in reality it has quite another, far vaster and deeper meaning. They forget, if ever they knew, that in all the ancient traditions, the sun itself is only a symbol, that of the true center of the world, which is the divine principle. If the center is first of all a point of departure, it is also a point of culmination. Everything issues from it, and everything must finally return to it. We also find here a no less remarkable analogy with the physiological function of the heart. In fact, the blood leaves the heart and circulates throughout the organism which it vivifies, then returns to the heart. The role of the latter as organic center is therefore truly complete and corresponds completely to the full significance of the center. All beings dependent on the principle in all that they are must consciously or unconsciously aspire to return to it." End quote. Mercury thus returns to the sun, indicating the relationship between these two cosmic principles. Mercury is the force that affects change and keeps the cosmos in constant motion, but even Mercury has a boss, and that is the sun. The sun is the life force behind Mercury, giving Mercury a direction and higher purpose. Their conjunction is a time of renewal of Mercury's spiritual direction and meaning, and the sign where the conjunction occurs tells us something about this new direction. So we embark on a new adventure now in our mercurial workings. Often it's quite clear. We might start a new course of study, communication, or writing. At other times, this conjunction inaugurates a more subtle process of transformation, the nature of which only becomes apparent later, perhaps during future key points in the Sun-Mercury synodic cycle. June 16th, Venus enters Cancer. This is one of the non-official signs where Venus likes to be, even though she doesn't have major dignity in Cancer. Here's why. Cancer is a nocturnal sign, and Venus is a nocturnal planet. She is cold and moist, as is Cancer, and Cancer is the sign ruled by the moon, and where Jupiter is exalted. Venus gets along very well with Jupiter and the moon, and the fertile nature of Cancer is highly congenial to Venus in her role as the goddess of abundance, love, and compassion. This can be a very delicate, imaginative, and spiritual placement for Venus, both in the natal context, but also as a transit, where Venus can facilitate powerful emotional, empathetic, and devotional states that get past our usual cerebral gatekeeping and emerge into pure love and empathy. Venus in Cancer thus brings us an opportunity to connect with others at a deep and meaningful level. Thanks for watching. This is Nina Gryphon, and this is the Astrology and Magic channel.